more analysis on this topic of discuss. I have joining me now via Skype the Chief Executive Officer of Cowrie Assets Limited, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, to talk more on this. Mr. Johnson, it's good to have you join us, and I hope you're enjoying the lockdown.
So thank you for having me. I doubt if anybody enjoyed the lockdown.
Now, let's start with the social investment program. A lot of money is being shared all around, and we're expecting more. Everybody's expecting it to come one way or the other, getting these funds in. Now, what do you think? What's your take with regards to this move by the government?
Well, it is good that the government has some social safety net for the citizens. The method of deployment of the social investment program is what I disagree with. I think in this time and age, you really can't afford to go around the corners and the streets of the country and the villages to be sharing cash to individuals, or in some instances, to be doling out food handouts to individuals. I think that's not a sustainable method to distribute social intervention funds or assistance. We need to adopt modern technology. I've actually advocated repeatedly that we need to adopt the current telecommunication technology to share whatever we have that we want to give out to the poorest of the citizens. And the reality is that you can't go around sharing cash to individuals. I mean, I understand they've been to 2 states, and how long will it take them to go around the 36 states? And then how you go to the nooks and crannies of the country where the poorest of the poor live? And you also need to deal with the challenge of social distancing. When you want to share these handouts in form of cash or food, you see a lot of people congregate around you, and they'll be pushing and shoving around. And if any one of them is affected, it could affect several others who are there to just get relief. So I think we should discontinue with the current approach. We need to adopt technology. And I've advocated that let's use our telecommunications numbers. Today, you can actually transfer money to people on their phones, and they can cash it in any of the payment platforms. Instead of giving out cash to individuals, let's use their phone numbers. And it is clear, if you look at the consumption of an individual, you can determine those who are the poorest at the rung of the ladder. Those who consume very minimal airtime, because they can't afford it, are the people you should be giving out handouts to. Okay. Use their number. Those are unique identification numbers.
I think the issue of data comes in here, talking about proper management of data in this part of the world.
Well, the key thing is that we've done biometric verification for all the phone users. Every phone that does not, any SIM that does not have a BVN is completely blocked. So the issue of the data, we already have data. We have data of unique phone numbers. I think they're talking about close to 100 million. And that is a representative of the families in the country or the individuals in the country. We talk of 200 million people. Remember, some of them are very young, extremely young, between the ages of 1, 0, and 12 or 13, they don't have phones. So if you look at the adults, you actually have some duplication in terms of number of phone users. I think if you use the lowest consumers, you clearly, and because they have a unique identification number in terms of their BVN, you can work with the telecommunication companies and use their BVN and their unique number, so you eliminate double counting where one individual has multiple numbers. I think if we want the BVN, the telco companies to give all that information, they can give it within a day.
Now, Mr. Johnson, the issue of borrowing now comes into play again. We saw $150 million US taken off NSIA, that's the Sovereign Investment Authority, that's the fund in that authority. Now, looking at all of this borrowing, IMF is considering looking at a $3.4 billion request. How well do you see all of this playing out in years to come?
In the first place, the amount they are borrowing from the Sovereign Investment Authority is the amount that has already been earmarked for such purpose. It is coming from what they call the stabilization fund. There are 3 funds that the Sovereign Investment Authority is managing for the country. You have the infrastructure fund, you have the future generation fund, and then you have the stabilization fund. The $150 million is coming from the stabilization fund. It is meant to smoothen the amount that is distributed to the 3 tiers of government at periods of low earnings. So it's serving this purpose. The other amount they are trying to raise is about $3.4 billion from IMF, drawing from our drawing entirely our drawing rights is where you have a challenge. Because this crisis does not seem like something that will go out in the next 3-4 months. If we exhaust the amount that we have in our special drawing rights, then where are we going to run to if the crisis lingers, which is the greatest concern I have? I think we need to come up with an articulated plan of how to manage the Nigerian economy in the next 1 or 2 years. The amount they want to draw will at best be shared, if we have to share it to the 3 tiers of government, for 3 months or 4 months at the best. Then we will see back to square one, where we no longer have a fallback position. And this is not the right time to go to the bond market, the Euro bond market, because the market is in a crisis. You really can't access funding. And to what matters, virtually all our credit ratings have been downgraded to negative. So we need to manage the limited resources that we have left with us. And that special drawing right is one of those few resources we have to fall back to. We shouldn't pull out everything we have there in one go and distribute to the 3 tiers of government, because the problem we have now is it's not about abating.
Now, Mr. Johnson, let's now look at the interventions. We've seen committees being set up by the president, one headed by our Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, and having the key members of that community. You have the Minister of Finance, National Planning, Budget and National Planning, the GMD of NNPC. We have the Central Bank Governor. We have all of these key players in when it comes to the economic rollout or outplay of this country. Now, what do you expect, or what are the short-term goals, or what should be the projections of this committee? What should they be looking at this time?
I think the first thing for them is to look at, like you say, what are the short-term goals? The short-term goals will be to cut down government expenditure and conserve as much resources as we can. I was quite happy when I hear the GMD of NNPC say that the government is doing away with subsidy on petroleum products. You and I have advocated for this repeatedly, year in, year out. And I'm happy to hear that. I think he needs to go the whole hog and liberalize the price of fuel in the country, and then let NNPC be what you call a market maker, come into the market to stabilize when there is a shortfall and ensure that we maintain some level of range of PMS price or fuel prices. So, but if we want to continue to fix the prices, then we are going to hobble the benefits that should come from deregulation. So first thing first, take out the subsidy, deregulate fully the downstream sector, and allow private sector investors to come into that sector and build refineries. That way we will conserve the amount we are spending on importation of petroleum products. If we don't deregulate fully, we will not get that benefit. We will at best save the amount we are spending on subsidy, but we will continue to import petroleum products, which will defeat the objective of having a deregulated market. That's one thing. The other thing we need to look at is that this committee should come up with the heavy lifting that we need to reposition the economy. One of those heavy lifting is restructuring the bureaucracy of the government. We have a lot of overlapping ministries, agencies, and departments that we now need to rationalize. We've toyed with this for more than 10 years, from the Steve Olasaya report that has not been implemented to today. Rather, what we've seen is a further duplication of agencies, ministries, and departments. It is now high time for us to have a leaner government so that we'll conserve the amount we're spending on the government overhead. Those two things, I think, are the first thing that the committees that have been set up should focus on. And then we now talk of how to diversify our export earnings, which will come from improvement in infrastructure supply. For instance, energy supply. If we improve energy supply, we should be able to produce a lot more things. I'm happy that the central bank has been pushing for domestication of our consumption by encouraging rice cultivation. We need to further drive that in other areas where we have competitive advantage.
Mr. Johnson Chukwu, it's always very nice talking to you on the show. Thank you very much.